Netflix's hit series Bridgerton has broken records and stolen hearts. But how does author Julia Quinn really feel about the adaptation? Did she really have no say over the script? And why wasn't she allowed in the writer's room? Was it a Regency-era disaster from start to finish, or the perfect fairy tale for Quinn? Let's find out what her reaction to Bridgerton really was. There are so many period dramas out there that have been released over the years, from Kate Winslet's Sense and Sensibility to TV shows like Harlots. It's no secret that Regency-era stories are really popular with audiences. But Netflix's Bridgerton brought something new and scandalous to the table. Not only was it critically praised for how inclusive it was, but it even broke Netflix records to become the most popular Netflix original to date. That's incredible, but where did the tale of the handsome Duke and the blossoming debutante actually come from? Well, we have author Julia Quinn to thank for that. Not all fans of the series may have realized at first that Bridgerton was actually adapted from a series of books by Quinn. The 50-something American writer has been on the New York bestseller list an incredible 19 times. But Bridgerton is the first time that her work has been given the Hollywood treatment. With that being said, how did she actually feel about putting the fate of her much-loved characters into the hands of hotshot TV producers? After all, giving up the rights to your life's work can't be easy. We'll spill all the tea on Julia's thoughts about the TV series. But first, let's take a look at how the Duke, Daphne, and the rest of the characters came alive in the first place. It turns out that Julia has always loved books from a very early age. In fact, she loved it so much that she's been writing ever since she was a little girl. But success didn't exactly come easy for the wannabe novelist. She submitted her first book to the publisher of teenage romance novels, Sweet Dreams, when she was just a teenager herself, but it was rejected. After that, Julia continued with her love of reading, but went on to study art history at college before switching it up. Although Julia had always wanted to do something creative, she decided to enroll in medical school. Surprisingly, it would be this switch that would change her life. Quinn kept writing lighthearted Regency-era novels while she studied to become a doctor, but suddenly she started to get noticed. Her books sold at auction, and by 1999, she had successfully published not one, not two, but 8 novels. That's pretty good going. In the end, she put down the stethoscope and picked up the pen full-time. But the best was yet to come. Julia released the first Bridgerton novel, The Duke and I, in 2000. Fans loved it, and many more Bridgerton novels were to follow. But Netflix didn't come knocking until 20 years later. 2 decades is a long time to own and develop characters, so was it a difficult decision for Quinn to hand over all control? Or was it an easy one? Well, it certainly helped that infamous producer Shonda Rhimes was the one that wanted to tell the story of the Bridgertons. As it turns out, Rhimes, who was the force behind massive hits like Scandal and Grey's Anatomy, discovered it by chance. According to Quinn, Shonda was on vacation when she ran out of books to read and ended up stumbling across the Bridgerton series by complete and total accident. Quinn said, "It's crazy to think that my life is forever changed because Shonda didn't bring enough reading material on vacation, but that's honestly what happened." Rhimes saw so much potential in the story that she knew she had to have it. We've all seen that it turned out to be one of the best decisions the producer and Netflix have ever made. But does Julia feel the same? She told Entertainment Weekly it was a huge shock to the system at first, saying, "Truly, I never thought this would happen to me, and I never thought it would happen to anyone because nobody was adapting romance novels, historical, or really even contemporary, for screen other than Hallmark movies. If somebody was going to do a period piece, they wanted to do another adaptation of Jane Austen or one of the Bronte sisters. Those are all wonderful, but the historical romance novels that are being written today are a little bit different, and there's a huge market for them. I don't think it's at all surprising that the person who would realize that would be Shonda Rhimes." Quinn has been really open about how the entire process affected her, from the very first phone call to seeing the finished results. However, while she's named as a consultant on Bridgerton, it might surprise you to learn that Quinn wasn't a part of the writing process for the show at all. In fact, she wasn't even allowed in the writer's room. Showrunner Chris Van Dusen allowed her the courtesy of reading all of the scripts after they were finished, but there was a clear line drawn in the sand. Quinn was the well-respected creator of all these fantastic and scandalous storylines, but when it came to adapting the show, Netflix and Rhimes had the final say. Julia had no control over the details once she signed on the dotted line. As an artist and creator, how did that impact her? She told EW that it wasn't such a bad process, despite what some might think. It's also interesting because as I look at it, I'll read something and be like, this is exactly the best way to do this. And I personally would not have thought of it. It's really shown me that there's this whole type of writing that I know very little about, but I'm learning. But there's one other glaring fact that can't be ignored. Netflix has stayed pretty true to the book so far, but not everything is exactly the same. In Bridgerton's case, some characters have been given more of a part and made more important, while other characters were created solely for the show, and that's all A-okay with Julia. In fact, she's more worried about how her readers might think she'll react. I feel the need to assure my readers and just say, look, this isn't a word-for-word adaptation, but it shouldn't be, and I don't want it to be. A word-for-word adaptation of my books would not make a great TV series. But an adaptation where you've got my characters and my stories, but give it new life is amazing. It's I have no words and I write words for a living, and it's just, I'm so excited by it. Of course, writers and showrunners and Shonda Rhimes have built the show from the ground up, but Bridgerton's success is largely down to the actors too. Regé-Jean Page and Phoebe Dynevor have completely stolen hearts as Simon Bassett and Daphne Bridgerton. Fans couldn't get enough of watching their incredible on-screen chemistry. There are even rumors of an offset romance, although both actors have laughed these off. Thankfully for Regé-Jean and Phoebe, they got Julia's stamp of approval. Julia recalled watching the finished product, saying, "There are little moments, for example, where Daphne is informed that she has a bunch of callers coming. She gives this squeal, and it's just this tiny little thing. It's just this little squeal where her arms are straight at her sides." And I was like, that's just exactly right. It's such a small little thing, but they've made these people so real and so wonderful and imperfect. As for Regé-Jean, let's just say that Quinn had the same reaction meeting him that any normal, sane person would. She told Oprah Meg about the first time they crossed paths when she visited the set, and honestly, it sounds like a dream come true. Regé is so insanely handsome. When I met him, he was holding a cup of coffee, and he handed his coffee to the person next to him, turned, and all of a sudden smiled. And I was like, how do you go through life looking like that? Oh my God, here we go. He's the Duke. There are some people, when they look at you, you feel like you're the only person in the world, and he's one of these people. It's clear to see that overall, the author is more than thrilled with how Bridgerton turned out, which is impressive considering just how little control she actually had over the show. That's not to say that she wasn't nervous at some points, though, especially as Netflix gave it a modern twist that wasn't always accurate. Period drama fans can be a bit harsh when it comes to how things are done, and no one knows that better than Julia. Quinn wrote her characters as white, but Shonda and Netflix transformed Bridgerton into a cultural feast that represents the world as it really is. "I think it's wonderful and joyous," says Quinn. "Previously, I've gotten dinged by the historical accuracy police, so in some ways, I was fearful. If you do that, are you denying real things that happened? But you know what? This is already a romantic fantasy, and I think it's more important to show that as many people as possible deserve this type of happiness and dignity. So I think they made the absolutely right choice, bringing in all that inclusivity. There's no doubt that Julia's characters have a long journey ahead of them, as Netflix has officially given the green light for Season 2. The Bridgertons and the Featheringtons will be around for a long time yet, but Julia's own fairy tale is just beginning. It's no secret that some authors have had completely awful experiences, but Quinn is having the time of her life. She's like a kid in a candy store, or should we say, a writer in Shondaland. We'll let Julia sum it up. When I was on set, I got asked, "Is this crazy to see your characters come to life?" And it is, but what I realized was even more incredible was the number of people working on it. The actors, crew, makeup people, and the guy who's making the lattes. You realize this thing that began in your head as one person now has hundreds and hundreds of people involved in it. That blew my mind. What do you think? Are you as excited about the future of Bridgerton as Julia? Let us know in the comments.